In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the Blender pen as part of your Promarker set so that you can blend one Promarker colour into the white of your paper and get really soft, delicate effects like the one that you can see with this little fairy here. Now, some people are quite scared of the Blender pen, but really it's really simple to use. It's no different to any of the other pens, and hopefully watching this tutorial you'll realise how easy it is and what nice effects that you can achieve with it. Right, so let's get going. First of all, I'm going to show you the colours that you'll need if you want to do this tutorial. So these are the colours. These are the Promarkers that you'll use, and these are the corresponding Copic Ciao colours. So for the Blossom you'll use V91, Fuchsia Pink, V12, etc. The Blender pens are basically just blenders in each one. So I'll let you have a look at those just for 2 seconds while I get ready. Right. So first of all, I'm just going to put down a piece of scrap paper so that when the Promarker pens bleed through a bit, you're not spoiling your furniture or anything. And I've got my stamped image, which we've stamped using a Memento ink pad, which is a dye-based ink pad, which means when you use your Promarkers, the ink won't smudge and you'll get a really nice crisp outline to it. So let's get going. Right, I'm going to colour a dress first. And the key, when you're using the Blender pen, which is here, this is the one you use first. Now basically it's just like all the other Promarkers, except it's clear. When you put it down, no colour comes out of it. Now, when I'm colouring in her top, I want the top half of her top to be white and the bottom half to be pink. So I need to put my Blender pen in the middle of her top, where the two colours are going to meet. Now when you put it down, I don't know if you can see from there, the paper sort of turns a little bit grey looking. This isn't a colour, it just means the paper's wet, and as it dries, that colour will completely disappear. So I've put that down. Now while that is still wet, I need to get my pink colour that I want to blend with the white. And I'm just going to put that on the bottom half of her top, overlapping into the bit where I've put the Blender pen. Like that. And then I'm just going to get my blender again and I'm going to just go over the middle bit so that you can see the pink blends perfectly with the white of the paper. And that is basically the fundamentals of how you use it. Again, doing her skirt, I'm putting the blender in the middle of her skirt where the pink and the white of the paper are going to meet. And then I'm going to get my pink again and I'm going to put that along the bottom edge of her skirt, overlapping into where I've put the blender. And again, all you've got to remember doing this is make sure you do it while your ink colours are still wet. Get my blender again and just lightly go over the centre where the pink is meeting the white, and as you can see it bleeds and blends in really nicely, and that is the fundamental basis of how you use it. I will put my blender again here, put my pink in, go over again the edge of the blender, and then underneath her skirt, just for a little bit more depth, I've got fuchsia pink, and I'm just going to put a tiny bit of that under there too. And then get a little bit more blossom and blend over the edges of the fuchsia pink. And then get my blender pen and blend over the edges of the blossom, like that. And for doing her shoes, it's exactly the same thing. I'm going to put the blender pen where I want most of the white to be, and get the blossom and then go down the bottom edge, overlapping where the blender pen is, and again get the blender pen and just lightly go over the edge. And the same thing for this one. Blender on and then use the blossom over into the edge where the blender is and smooth off the edges with the blender pen. And then again, just for a little bit more depth, I'm going to put a tiny bit of fuchsia pink on the bottoms, and then use the blossom to blend into that so that it's got a nice smooth finish, and use the blender pen to smooth off the edge of the blossom like that. Right, I'll do a socks now, and I'll make these a little bit darker just so there's a bit more definition. So I'm using fuchsia pink, and then I'll use the blossom and alternate the stripes. Don't worry about being too precise because it really doesn't matter. Any little bits that you go over the lines and that only sort of add to the sketchiness of the image. And now for her wings, again I want them to be nice and pale so that they match her skirt. So I'm just going to have the blender pen in there, and then I'm going to run the blossom just on the outside edge of her wings, again into where I've put the blender pen so it will bleed and you get a nice gentle edged effect. And then put the blender pen on here. Remember to work in sections when you've got small areas as well, so that you don't get an overlap. And that, because if you do all your wing in one go and put all your blender pen down, you may find that some of the pink from one bit of your wing will bleed into the sort of white bit of the other bit of your wing, and you really don't want that. Again, I'm just putting this down, the blender pen, and this time I'm just going to put a bit of the pink in the inside bit of her wing. And again, let's go over the edge with the blender, and then tiny bit of pink there, and again use the blender to smooth that out. And that is using your blender pen to colour in your dress. Now I'll just do her skin and hair so that she's nicely finished off. I'm using blush for her skin, which is a really lovely colour. When you put it on it looks quite dark, but once it dries it's a perfect skin colour. I'm just colouring in her hands and her little arms like that. And then I've got soft peach, which I'm going to use while the blush is still wet to give her a little bit of a flush cheek there. And as long as you put it down while the blush is still wet, that'll bleed into that and give you a really nice finish. And then for her hair, I'm using buttercup yellow, but I wanted to have a little bit of highlight on the top of her head. So again, I'm going to put the blender pen on the top of her head, and then I'm going to use the buttercup yellow to colour in the rest of her hair, and again go over into the bit where I've put the blender pen, but not right up to the top of her head, so that once it dries, blend it off with the blender a bit. Once that dries, that bit at the top will be white, and so you'll get a really nice highlighted bit for her hair. And then I'm just going to do the flowers, which I'm just going to do in bits of blossom and fuchsia pink, which I'm just dotting the colours on quite randomly. Go over again so that they kind of bleed into one another, and again it gives you a really nice soft finish. Just do a little bit of blended on that, and then on that. And that basically is how you use your blender pen to colour in your little fairy and get really delicate effects.